Welcome to the deep dive. So, today we are tackling what might be, I think, the single most fascinating sports paradox of this century.
Oh, yeah. Which one's that?
The greatest partnership in NFL history. We're talking, of course, about the chicken or the egg debate, the New England Patriots empire, built by those two titans, Bill Belichick, the legendary coach, the
Yeah,
architect.
Tom Brady, the
Yeah.
guy on the field, the executor, the quarterback, just incomparable, really.
Right. And you know the scale of their success. I mean, it's almost unreal. 19 seasons together, 9 trips to the Super Bowl, 6 wins.
6 victories, yeah, it's
Yep.
staggering. For 2 decades, they just defied everything. The salary cap, the parity, the NFL tries so hard to enforce. But yeah, for years, everyone argued who was more indispensable, who was the real key.
And what's so interesting, what makes this a perfect topic for us, is that their separation in 2020,
Right.
well, it basically gave us this rare, real-world natural experiment.
Right, exactly. Suddenly we have data. 4 years of data where they were operating on their own independently. So our mission today is to really dive deep into the analytical side of things, dissect that evidence.
To use the quantifiable results, to try and deliver maybe a definitive verdict.
Well, as definitive as we can get, anyway. And maybe before we really unpack all the data, all the evidence supporting the main claim, let's just state the source's conclusion right up front.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
So while acknowledging, obviously, that their partnership was symbiotic, I mean, deeply intertwined, the overwhelming evidence, especially from their time apart, it suggests Tom Brady was the more indispensable element, at least for that sustained championship-level success the Patriots had.
Right. So the conclusion we're kind of working towards here, it justifies a specific allocation of credit. Belichick built the machine, the system.
But Brady was the engine, the unique, irreplaceable engine that made it go, especially when it mattered most.
Yeah.
The analysis we're drawing from actually puts numbers on it. 63% of the credit to Brady, 37% to Belichick.
63-37, that split, it really says something, doesn't it?
It speaks volumes, but
Mhm.
the devil's always in the details. We need to explore why. Why does the data point so strongly toward Brady, the executor, even when you're talking about the genius of Belichick, the architect?
Okay, 63% for Brady, 37 for Belichick. Right, let's unpack this. Because, I mean, to even start this conversation, we have to first just sit back and appreciate the sheer, staggering level of dominance they achieved together, 2001 to 2019.
That's almost hard to wrap your head around. Ashtay, Chegg, Had-I, The Anatomy of Shared Success, 2001, 2019.
The raw data. I mean, you look at the Patriots dynasty stats, and it almost feels like a typo in the record books. Over those 19 seasons, their regular season record was 232 wins and just 72 losses.
232 and 72. That's not just winning, that's domination. A .763 winning percentage in a league specifically designed for parity. It's just utterly unbelievable.
And that consistency, right, that's the first pillar of this whole debate. It wasn't just about winning a Super Bowl here and there.
It was about building this culture where, like, if they didn't make the AFC Championship game, the season felt like a failure. We're talking 17 AFC East titles.
17.
13 times in the AFC Championship game, 9 Super Bowl appearances, and those 6 rings. It's relentless.
I think, for me, the most powerful stat, maybe the one that gets overlooked sometimes, but it really underscores the sheer grinding nature of their excellence. It's that streak. 19 consecutive seasons finishing at .50 or better.
Exactly. That's the one. Because when you look back, historically, longevity like that, it just doesn't happen in pro football. During that exact same 19-season stretch, 2001 to 2019, every single other team in the NFL,
Everyone.
every single one,
Yeah.
Steelers, Cowboys, Packers, you name them, they all had at least one losing season. Most had, quite a few. The Patriots were the only constant. That relentlessly high floor, that's a monumental testament to the system, the efficiency Belichick put in place.
Okay, but here's where it gets nuanced, right? To understand who really drove the dynasty, we have to recognize that this 19-year run, it wasn't just one long, static period of success.
Right.
The source material we looked at is really clear on this. It was actually 2 distinct mini-dynasties, kind of separated by rule changes, tactical shifts, and this shows that both Brady and Belichick had to adapt profoundly.
That adaptation is so key. The first run, the first trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Winning in 2001, 2003, 2004, that was built almost entirely on Belichick's defensive foundation.
Yeah, the team identity was defense. Toughness, physicality, ball control. They were just a defensive monster.
You see it crystal clear in that 2001 Super Bowl. Super Bowl XXX, they're playing the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf. High-flying offense, everybody expected them to win big. Favored by 14 points.
14 points, yeah.
And Belichick's defense just neutralized them. Held arguably one of the best offenses ever to just 17 points. That was the identity.
And Brady's role back then, especially in those early years, it was critical, sure, but it was fundamentally different from what he became later, wasn't it?
Oh, completely different. He was the efficient game manager. Clutch, definitely. Made the throws when he absolutely had to, didn't turn the ball over. But, across that entire 2001 playoff run, I think he was averaging something like 190 passing yards a game.
Wow, okay.
He was the steady hand, the guy who didn't lose you the game. But the identity, the engine, was the defense.
And that defensive genius just kept baffling rivals. I mean, think about their run against Peyton Manning and the Colts in the early 2000s.
Right. The 2003 AFC Championship.
Mm.
They hold that incredible Colts offense to just 14 points. Then the next year, divisional round, they hold that same record-setting offense to a measly 3 points.
3 points.
The defensive game plans were just so complex, so multiple, suffocating. In that first phase, Belichick's defensive mastery, it gave them the stability, that margin for error. It gave young Brady the space to grow into the role. The defense really carried the offense back then.
It's pretty amazing, though, how quickly Belichick had to pivot. Because after those first few Super Bowls, the league started shifting. Rule changes came in, we'll get into those later, and suddenly winning championships required something totally different from Brady.
Exactly. Which brings us to phase 2, the offensive apex. Really starting around the 2007 season.
Yeah, 2007.
By then, the league was clearly prioritizing passing, scoring. And Belichick, to his credit, made a really critical, aggressive shift. He went out and got Randy Moss, Hall of Fame receiver.
Huge move.
And that move just flipped the team's identity, almost overnight.
And the results were, well, explosive doesn't even cover it. A perfect 16-0 regular season. Brady throws, 50 touchdown passes? A record at the time?
50 TDs. And Moss catches 23 of them, which is still the single-season record. Now, okay, they lost the Super Bowl that year in that huge upset.
That catch, right.
But the blueprint was set. From that point on, the Patriots' identity was Brady, the transcendent, high-volume, elite passer.
And this led to the second trilogy of championships, right? 2014, 2016, 2018.
Exactly. And while Belichick's defense still had moments of absolute genius, like holding the Rams to 3 points again in Super Bowl LA3, which is incredible.
Incredible, yeah.
Those later titles, they were won primarily because Brady could just command and execute these complex modern passing attacks under unbelievable pressure.
I think the quintessential example have to be Super Bowl LA. Down 28-3 against the Falcons.
28-3, yeah.
That comeback, it's unprecedented on the biggest stage. And watching it, reading the analysis, it wasn't really about scheme or coaching adjustments in those moments. It was described almost entirely as Brady. Just his individual brilliance, his mental toughness, his absolute ice-cold composure in a situation where, statistically, they had basically zero chance.
Right. The ability to execute like that with that level of precision, especially when maybe the defense was struggling a bit more in that era, it just elevated the whole team. Let's be honest, by the end of the dynasty, that team's entire DNA was wrapped around number 12.
Okay, so let's shift focus fully to Belichick for a bit, because he was, as you said, far more than just a coach. He was the organizational architect, and uniquely, he was both head coach and the de facto general manager.
Which gave him total control, top down.
Yeah.
Personnel, culture, everything. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because that control, that's what defined the organizational stability for so long.
His philosophy, the Patriot way, it was famously, maybe notoriously unsentimental.
Ruthlessly forward-thinking, yeah. His central mantra for roster building was basically get rid of a player a year too early rather than a year too late.
Brutal.
It sounds brutal, but it sustained the roster's health. He prioritized the system's needs both financially and schematically over any kind of personal attachment to a player, even a star.
And we saw it time and time again, constantly trading or just letting go of star players right when they were due for those massive contracts. Guys like Richard Seymour, Lawyer Malloy early on, leader Chandler Jones, Jamie Collins.
The list goes on. And I think people forget just how hard that kind of fiscal discipline is to maintain, especially when players are popular or performing well.
But it was crucial, wasn't it? Because that strategy, it stopped the Patriots from getting that top-heavy salary cap structure.
Exactly. That's what sinks so many other potential dynasties. A team gets top-heavy, they're paying huge money to just a handful of elite guys. then there's no cap space left for quality depth.
And then what happened?
One or two of those stars inevitably get injured, and the whole team just collapses because there's no one solid behind them. Belichick minimized that risk like nobody else.
And the numbers back this up. The source pointed out that apart from Brady, who, let's be clear, famously and consistently took less than his market value to help the team.
Huge factor in itself.
Huge factor. But besides Brady, no other player accounted for more than, 7% of the team's salary cap during the peak dynasty years?
7%. Think about that. It allowed them to build these deep, balanced rosters. They could absorb injuries. They could absorb a bad draft pick here or there, even some poor midseason play without the whole season just derailing.
Now, you mentioned drafting. The source material does note his record there was, let's say, a bit mixed.
Yeah, especially finding those top-tier wide receivers early in the draft. That was kind of his Achilles heel as a GM.
But where he consistently excelled was finding guys who fit his specific criteria, intelligence, and, crucially, positional versatility.
Right. Tell us more about that versatility. Why was that so central to his system?
Well, Belichick's genius, a lot of it, lies in his game planning, right? It was always opponent-specific. His defensive schemes, especially, could change completely from one week to the next, depending on who they were playing.
Okay.
So to execute that kind of complexity, he needed smart football players, guys who were adaptable, who could handle multiple roles, maybe play different positions or alignments. That's how you get guys like Julian Edelman, who is a college quarterback.
7th-round pick.
7th-round pick. Or Troy Brown, who sometimes even played defensive back for them. They were like these interchangeable chess pieces who understood the bigger strategic picture.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we absolutely cannot talk about Belichick without hammering home his core, consistent genius, his defensive planning. Even with all the rule changes later on that favored offense, he consistently fielded elite defensive units year after year.
This point is just massive for Belichick's case, isn't it? The stat that Brady played with more top 10 ranked defenses measured by points allowed than Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers combined.
Combined, yeah. It's a truly staggering statistic when you let it sink in. Belichick provided this constant elite safety net, a defensive bedrock. It was fundamental to their early success, obviously, but it also provided crucial stability later on, even when the offense sometimes hit rough patches.
Okay. So, if we're making the strongest possible case for Belichick being indispensable, we absolutely have to tackle the big counterargument. The one Patriots loyalists always point to as the ultimate proof, the 2008 season, the Matt Cassell year.
Yes, 2008. That is the historical anchor for the "it was Belichick" argument. And yeah, we have to break it down carefully.
So the setup. Brady tears his ACL in week 1, done for the year.
Right. Disaster. And Belichick takes a team led by Matt Cassell, a guy who hadn't started a football game since high school, and coaches them to an 11-5 record.
11-5. On the surface, it looks like the ultimate proof, right? The system is king, the coach is king, it's plug and play. Cassell himself, he played pretty well, almost 3,700 yards, 21 TDs, only 11 interceptions. Respectable number.
Very respectable. But,
yeah,
and this is a big but, the analysis provides some absolutely crucial context here. Context that frankly kind of dissolves that argument when you look closer.
What's this?
The 2008 Patriots roster was arguably one of the most talented, if not the most talented roster of the entire two-decade dynasty.
Right. This was basically the same team that went 16-0 the year before.
Exactly. It was a machine perfectly oiled from that historic run. The offense still had Randy Moss in his prime, Wes Welker in his prime, both all-pro level guys. The defense also finished, I believe, 8th in the league in points allowed that year. Top 10 again.
So the team was absolutely loaded, built for success, almost regardless of who was under center.
Pretty much. The key takeaway from 2008, especially when you contrast it with what happened after 2020, it's this. Belichick demonstrated his incredible ability to establish a high floor of competitiveness. He could take a supremely talented team, even with a backup QB who hadn't played, and coach them to a winning record, get respectable stats out of them.
Okay, high floor. But what about the ceiling?
That's the catch. However, despite going 11-5, that 2008 team still missed the playoffs. They lost out on a tiebreaker, which tells you they lacked that final margin for error.
Yeah.
And crucially, they lost to all 3 of the elite AFC teams they played that year.
Who were they?
The Steelers, the Colts, and the Chargers. The teams they would have needed to beat to actually contend for a championship.
So, 2008. It showed Belichick's genius in providing stability, getting the most out of a stacked roster. But it didn't provide the championship transcendence, the magic.
Precisely. It showed the high floor, yet maintained by the system and all that surrounding talent. But the ceiling,
Yeah.
the thing that defined the rest of the dynasty, the ability to win those tight games against the very best competition, that was missing. And the evidence, especially later evidence, strongly suggests that ceiling. Well, that was Brady.
Okay, so if Belichick built the foundation, ensured the walls were solid, provided that high floor, then Brady was the element that just raised the roof, sent it into the stratosphere. When you look at the evidence, what really stands out to you about the measurable Brady effect? How did he impact the actual performance of the guys around him?
It's his ability, really, to act as the ultimate offensive force multiplier. Brady's greatness, it isn't just counted in his 7 rings or his MVPs, right? It's in his quantifiable, measurable ability to elevate teammates, to turn good players into great ones, and sometimes, frankly, average players into Pro Bowlers or key contributors.
And the with or without you stats are pretty damning here, aren't they?
They're overwhelming proof.
Let's start with Wes Welker, maybe the clearest example of this kind of transformation. He was, what, a solid return guy, decent receiver in Miami before he came to New England.
Solid, but pretty unspectacular before Brady. And then, boom, with Brady, he instantly becomes the most prolific slot receiver of his entire generation.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about, like, a small improvement here.
No.
We're talking a statistical explosion, enabled entirely by Brady's accuracy, his timing, his trust. Look at the hard numbers the analysis pulled. In 78 games with Brady, Welker averaged 7.3 catches and 81.3 yards per game.
Okay, pretty great numbers.
Elite numbers for a slot guy back then. Now look at his career without Brady. That includes his time before New England and after he left. In 97 career games without Brady throwing the ball, those numbers plummet. 3.5 receptions per game, 36.9 yards per game.
Wow. That's massive. That's more than cutting his production in half when he wasn't playing with Brady.
Cut by more than half. That's not just about a system, is it? That points to a specific, unique synergy, a quarterback-receiver relationship.
So what was it about Brady's game that unlocked Welker like that?
Well, think about it. It's Brady's legendary accuracy, especially in tight windows over the middle, and his ability to read defenses after the snap to anticipate where Welker would be. It allowed Welker to run these really complex, maybe even riskier option rights over the middle, trusting that the ball would arrive perfectly, right on time, protecting him from big hits. That synergy, that total trust, it made Welker elite.
Okay, Welker's a strong case. What about Rob Gronkowski? Their connection felt different, maybe more like the most dominant QB pass-catcher duo ever.
It was definitely a duo, absolutely. Their synergy was mutual.
Yeah.
Gronk obviously helped Brady tremendously. But the data still shows a clear dependency on Brady for Gronk's production, too.
How so?
Okay, Gronkowski with Brady averaged 65.8 yards and 4.4 catches per game. Hall of Fame numbers. But in the 2 career games Gronk actually played when Brady wasn't on the roster, get this. He had a grand total of 1 catch. 1 catch, total, in 2 games. 1 catch for 11 yards, total. Across 2 full games without Brady, it's hard to argue that's just the system working independently.
Yes, that's pretty definitive.
And while Gronk definitely boosted Brady, I mean, Brady's own passer rating was way higher, like 103.8 with Gronk on the field compared to 89.6 without him into. Gronkowski's own individual production was clearly maximized almost exclusively by Brady being there.
I think, for me, maybe the most compelling narrative evidence of this Brady effect is how he elevated guys who weren't superstars coming in, guys picked late in the draft, guys who maybe wouldn't normally become championship heroes.
Absolutely. That's a huge point. We're talking about players like Deion Branch, a second-round pick, sure, but he became a Super Bowl MVP largely because of his connection with Brady in that game.
And Julian Edelman.
Julian Edelman, famously a college quarterback,
Yeah.
drafted in the 7th round, becomes one of the most clutch postseason receivers in NFL history, ends his career with, nearly 600 catches? That doesn't happen without an elite QB finding you and trusting you in the biggest moments.
So Belichick found these guys, right? He identified their intelligence, their versatility. That's commendable GM work, finding those diamonds in the rough.
It absolutely is. Give him credit for identifying the traits. But it was Brady's presence, Brady's execution on the field that unlocked their full potential, maximized it. Without that specific level of quarterback play, those late-round picks, they're probably just solid depth players, maybe special teamers. They don't become Super Bowl heroes.
So the implication seems pretty clear then.
Yeah. Even the greatest coach, the best system in the world, it seems it can't fully maximize the production of its offensive talent without that truly transcendent quarterback driving the whole scheme. Brady was the catalyst. He turned depth into dominance, good players into great ones. Okay, but if we're really going to connect all these dots, put this whole debate in the proper context. We have to look beyond just Brady and Belichick. We have to acknowledge a huge external factor. The NFL itself changed drastically right around them during their reign.
How so?
Well, the league essentially created an environment that was almost tailor-made for Tom Brady's longevity and, frankly, his style of offensive success.
You're talking about the rule changes.
Primarily, yeah. The league transformation, really starting in the early 2000s, it was driven mostly by wanting to enhance player safety, sure, but also very much by wanting to promote offense. More scoring, more excitement.
And the result was basically putting this protective bubble around quarterbacks, especially elite pocket passers like Brady, which was obviously crucial to him playing effectively into his mid-40s.
It's a massive point. You saw this systematic shift, rule by rule, protecting the QB's body, extending careers. Back in 2002, they made helmet-to-helmet hits illegal after a change of possession. Okay? Then in 2006, they prohibited forcible contact at or below the knees unless the defender was, actively blocked into the QB. Small changes, but they add up.
Reducing the risk of those catastrophic injuries in the pocket.
Exactly. And then came the big one, the really famous one, the Brady Rule in 2009, which was put in, let's be honest, in direct response to Brady suffering that season-ending ACL tear in Week 1 of 2008.
Right. So what did that specific rule do?
That rule was surgically precise in its impact. It specifically made it illegal for a defender who was already on the ground, say, after slipping or being blocked down, to then lunge or dive at the quarterback's knee area or below. It fundamentally changed how pass rushers had to finish a sack attempt near the QB's legs. They had to adjust their angles, often slow down slightly. It might seem small, but these protections cumulatively reduced the physical wear and tear on Brady's legs and knees over years and years. It absolutely enabled him to keep playing at an MVP level deep into his 40s, which extended the dynasty itself by several years.
Okay, so protecting the quarterback was one big piece. But it wasn't just that, was it? The rules also actively started opening up the passing lanes for receivers, which had to benefit Brady's precision, timing-based game immensely.
Oh, absolutely. You could argue the enforcement of the illegal contact rule, unofficially known back then as the Ty Law rule, was maybe the single most important change for boosting offensive dominance across the league.
And that came about after.
That followed the 2004 AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
The one where the Patriots' very physical cornerbacks, especially Ty Law, were just absolutely battering Marvin Harrison and the Colts receivers all over the field, legally at the time.
Okay, so what did the stricter enforcement actually mean on the field? How did it change a cornerback's job basically overnight?
It was revolutionary for offenses. The stricter enforcement meant any significant contact with a receiver more than 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage was likely getting flagged. It just cracked down hard. And it effectively ended the era of bully cornerback play, that physical bump-and-run coverage that teams like the early Pats excelled at. Gone. Cornerbacks just couldn't legally reroute or slow down receivers downfield with physicality anymore.
Which, ironically, was exactly Belichick's defensive bread and butter in that first championship trilogy. His schemes relied heavily on that physicality, disrupting the timing of routes.
Correct. The rule changes directly attacked Belichick's preferred defensive style.
Yeah.
Suddenly, precision QBs like Brady, guys who thrive on rhythm and timing, they could operate with much less fear of physical disruption 5-10 yards downfield.
And then you combine that with the defenseless receiver protections.
Right. Those started coming in strong around 2009, too. Harsher penalties for hitting receivers who were deemed defenseless, like when they're reaching for a pass, especially over the middle. That made throwing into traffic much safer for those slot receivers, guys like Welker and later Edelman. It just created an environment that was increasingly tailored, you could say, for elite quarterback execution and high-volume passing.
So it really does sound like a double-edged sword, then, in the context of this debate.
It really was. The external context, the rules, they simultaneously amplified Brady's core strengths, his precision, his composure, his ability to play forever, while directly attacking Belichick's primary function, which was designing and coaching those physical, suffocating defenses.
Which makes Belichick's continued defensive success, even despite those changes, pretty remarkable in its own right.
Oh, it's a monumental testament to his coaching genius, his adaptability. He somehow managed to keep innovating, keep fielding strong defenses, even when the rules were actively working against his favorite tactics. He succeeded in an era that was constantly tilting the field toward the offense. But the fact remains, the league evolved into a quarterback league. The playing field was tailored to maximize offensive excellence and QB longevity, and that environment naturally favored the transcendent quarterback in our debate.
Okay, so this brings us finally to the ultimate proof, right? The separation, 2020. It gave us that real-world scientific control group we needed for this debate. And the results, I mean, they're pretty stark, definitive even, highly revealing.
Yeah, let's start with Brady Unchained. Brady leaves New England. His move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020. Honestly, it provided the single most compelling piece of evidence for his indispensability. Think about it. He joins a franchise that hadn't seen the playoffs in 13 years.
13 years. That's a long time wandering in the NFL desert. A culture of losing, really.
Exactly. A long, storied history of losing, frankly. And what was the immediate impact when Brady walked in the door?
Immediate, transformative, and championship winning. That's the headline. He led them to win Super Bowl LV in his very first season there.
First season. It just proved, right then and there, that his ability to elevate a franchise, to instill that championship mentality and execution, it was portable. It wasn't solely reliant on the Patriots institution or the Patriot way or Belichick system. He could take it with him.
So let's break down his 3 seasons in Tampa overall. What did that look like?
Okay, 3 seasons there. Brady posts a 32-18 regular season record. That's a .640 winning percentage. Pretty darn good. Led the team to the playoffs all 3 years and won the franchise's first ever back-to-back division titles. Now, let's be fair here.
Okay.
He wasn't like a lone savior dragging a terrible roster to glory. The Bucs had talent. They had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, some good offensive linemen, and they had a pretty good defense too, ranked 8th in 2020, 5th in 2021. So the pieces were there.
But they needed something more.
They needed the catalyst, and Brady was absolutely that essential catalyst. He brought the championship expectations, the on-field strategic genius, the ability to demand flawless execution and get it when it mattered most. He basically activated the championship potential that was just sitting there latent in that roster.
Okay, so that's Brady and Tampa. Now, let's look at the flip side. Belichick adrift, post-Brady Patriots, and the decline. Yeah.
Oh, it was pretty shocking, wasn't it? Just the speed and the depth of it.
It was an incredibly stark contrast. In those 4 seasons from 2020 through 2023, Belichick's Patriots compiled a losing record. 29 wins, 38 losses.
29-38, that's a .433 winning percentage.
.433. They made the playoffs just once in those 4 years and got blown out. Failed to win a single postseason game.
And that decline was so significant, it actually dragged Belichick's entire career coaching record without Tom Brady down below .50s, right? That's right. His final record without Brady ended up being 84 wins and 104 losses, sub .500, which really challenges that whole narrative that the Belichick system itself was inherently self-sustaining at an elite level.
But how do you explain that? I mean, Belichick, arguably the greatest defensive mind ever, the ultimate organizational architect, still had absolute control as GM and coach. Why did the system seem to fail so quickly, so badly, without Brady?
Well, the root cause, pretty clearly, was the failure to solve the quarterback crisis.
Yeah.
Which you have to say is a critical failure for a guy who also held the general manager title and had final say on personnel.
Right.
He cycled through quarterbacks,
Right.
tried Cam Newton for a year, drafted Mac Jones in the first round, ended up playing Bailey Zappi. He just couldn't acquire or develop a quarterback who could operate that offense at a consistently winning level in the modern NFL.
And the result on the field was that this offense, which was a perennial powerhouse for 2 decades, it just cratered, became one of the worst in the league.
Absolutely cratered. They were 6th in points scored in 2021. Mac Jones' rookie year, they had a bit of hope there. Then plummeted to 17th in 2022. And then rock bottomed in 2023. 31st in the league in scoring.
31st. Awful.
Awful. And that led to the ultimate low point. A .413 record in 2023. Belichick's worst ever season as a head coach. Which ultimately led to his departure from the Patriots.
So let's put the final comparison side by side. The control group experiment results. Brady in Tampa, 32-18 regular season, 5-2 in the playoffs, 1 Super Bowl ring.
Right.
Belichick post-Brady in New England, 29-38 regular season, 0-1 in the playoffs, 0 Super Bowl.
Yeah. The data really couldn't be much clearer, could it? It heavily, heavily favors Brady as the one providing the indispensable championship ceiling.
And it reframes that 2008 Cassell season too, doesn't it?
Completely. That 2008 season, which showed Belichick could maintain a high floor, well, that wasn't repeatable in the 2020s because the crucial variable had changed.
Yeah.
The underlying roster was no longer arguably the most talented in the entire league. Belichick proved, yeah, he could win 11 games with a perfect roster and a backup QB in 08. But when his own GM track record faltered a bit post-Brady and the overall surrounding talent inevitably declined, he couldn't maintain even competitiveness, let alone a championship ceiling, without an elite quarterback. The dependency became undeniable. Hashtag Tag Shack26. Final verdict and synthesis. So, okay, this really raises the final big question, doesn't it? When you look at everything, the 2 decades together, the 4 years apart, the context of the modern quarterback-driven NFL, how do we synthesize the genius of these two giants? How do we assign that final credit?
Well, the source material we use synthesizes their roles, I think, quite beautifully. Belichick, the architect, he established the culture the Patriot way. He built and maintained those elite defenses year after year. He set that unbelievably high floor of organizational excellence and consistency. And let's never forget, his decision back in 2001 to stick with the young, unknown Brady over the established star Drew Bledsoe, that remains the single most important personnel decision in the dynasty's entire history, maybe NFL history.
Absolutely. That's the essential starting point. You don't get Brady without Belichick making that incredibly bold call. Brady was the emperor. He was the on-field executor. He was the force multiplier we talked about. He provided the championship ceiling. He proved his greatness was portable, transferable to a different organization, and he elevated almost every single offensive player around him to levels they likely couldn't have reached on their own. Their success was absolutely symbiotic. The machine needed that unique engine.
However, at the end of the day, that post-2019 data, the 4 years apart, it really serves as the definitive tiebreaker, doesn't it?
It really does.
Brady proved his championship ceiling was portable. He could take it with him. Belichick's rapid, deep decline without Brady, and specifically his inability to solve the quarterback crisis himself, it exposed a critical dependency, a dependency on having elite QB play, which his system ultimately couldn't manufacture on its own.
Yet, the analysis is pretty clear when you weigh everything. Belichick built a perennial winner, a high-floor organization capable of consistently competing, consistently being in the mix. But it was Brady who turned that winner into the greatest dynasty the sport has ever seen. Without an elite quarterback, Belichick's teams, as proven post-2020, seem to be competitive at best, maybe mediocre at worst, but they just don't reach that required championship ceiling in today's NFL.
Which brings us right back to that final allocation we mentioned at the start. While their success was completely intertwined, inseparable for 2 decades, the conclusion aligns strongly with the analysis that assigns roughly 63% of the credit for that sustained, dynastic success to Brady.
And 37% to Belichick, reflecting, really, the portable outsized impact of the truly transcendent player at what is undeniably the single most critical position in the modern game. Hashtag TagAtra.
So let's quickly recap the key takeaways for you. We broke down the dynasty into its 2 distinct phases, the early defensive foundation and the later offensive apex, showing how both men had to adapt.
Right. We looked at the quantifiable Brady effect, using guys like Wes Welker and Gronk to show how he acted as a force multiplier, elevating teammates' production dramatically.
And critically, we used those 4 years apart, 2020 to 2023, as the definitive control group experiment. It demonstrated Brady immediately achieving the championship ceiling in Tampa.
While Belichick, without Brady, failed to even maintain a competitive floor consistently in New England, really exposing that crucial dependency on having an elite QB he couldn't find.
But I think the final, maybe most provocative thought, something that builds on the source material but takes it a step further, is this. The analysis clearly established that the NFL's own rule changes, like the Ty Law rule opening up passing, and the Brady rule protecting QBs and extending his career. These things created the perfect environment for Brady's specific brand of long-term offensive success.
Right, so the question becomes, if the structure of the modern NFL was almost custom-built for offensive excellence and quarterback longevity, does that mean the Patriots dynasty was maybe merely a product of optimal timing? Was it just the perfect storm of an offensive genius Brady meeting an era that was tailored precisely for his skill set?
Did Belichick just pick the absolute right guy at the absolute right time, creating an unbeatable combination for that specific era? Or did the league's evolution simply make the truly transcendent quarterback too powerful, too impactful to overcome, regardless of the coaching genius on the other side?
That's the final, maybe unanswerable variable, isn't it? Something for you to mull over. How much was them and how much was the era they dominated?
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope we left you well-informed and maybe, just maybe, slightly obsessed with digging into the beautiful, messy details of sports history. We'll catch you next time.